Support for this program on VPM comes from our members in partnership with Commonwealth Savers through its Invest 529 program, allowing families to save instead of borrowing for higher education costs. Learn more at invest529.com.
Shentel, presenting Glow Fiber, connecting area homes, businesses, and communities with fiber internet services. Fiber was made for the internet, and Glow Fiber was made for you. Glow Fiber, created by Shentel.
Virginia consistently ranks near the top when it comes to racial and ethnic diversity among American states. But what does that really mean? In this special edition of VPM News Focal Point, we'll take a look at specific ethnic and racial groups that call the Commonwealth home and see how their presence impacts the lives of all Virginians. VPM News Focal Point is next.
Production funding for VPM News Focal Point is provided by
Thank you for joining us for this special edition of VPM News Focal Point. I'm Angie Miles. Virginia is home to a number of racial, ethnic, and cultural groups, many with fascinating histories chronicling their group's arrival in the Commonwealth and compelling stories about their influence on the state. Have you heard, for example, of the term Mulungeon? The word likely derives from the French word mélange, mixture, and at one time it was considered an insult when describing this blended race of people living primarily in the Appalachian regions. Now, for many, it is a source of pride. Our Billy Shields had an interesting conversation with a man with Mulungeon ancestry mean.
A person's identity at one moment in history might be a different identity in a separate moment. The way you were raised and the things that you were told about your own background, how did all of that play out in your own life? You might hear the term Mulungeon, and what would that mean to you?
I never heard that term other than my dad would talk about Ma Sally, as he would always say, is my great-great-grandmother. And he kind of give me this story of she was an Indian or Native American, and he would always describe her as having this hair, real long hair that came down almost to her waist in the back, and he just always described that, but didn't go into detail. That was it. It was like pulling hen's teeth from him, try to pull this information out. It was interesting, but still I didn't know a lot. But I think my dad was interacting with the cousins that he grew up with and knew and visited with, and it was just something that I don't think he even realized that was a missing link for me. And actually, some of them I worked with and didn't know I was related to them.
Do you think it's a situation where there were things that maybe your dad didn't want to talk to you about? Perhaps this was a more complicated narrative than he wanted to go into?
My dad really didn't. I think he was more protecting me from a lot of the things and things that were going on during that time. And also in Virginia, just coming from the north to the south, we always traveled early in the morning. I didn't know why. Of course, cars got New York plates on it. He'd want to gas up in Washington, D.C. first and then make it all the way in. I said, well, why don't you say, oh, no, I want to get gas here, not knowing that segregation and all those things were taking place at the time. Yeah. So he and my mom both protected the two young kids.
One of the things that you sometimes hear among the Mulungeon community, some people would say that they're Portuguese sailors that ended up in the mountains, or Turkish sailors, that kind of thing. And of genetic, that changed the idea down to you from your family at all?
Finding out about this, it was just like overwhelming for me. It was just a lot. hear about the Mulungeons or the Maroon community, so to speak. Sometimes I have actually run into somebody that is actually Native American because I see a T-shirt that they may have, but they're not as dark complexion as I am. And I asked them, just strike up a conversation, and then here we go with, this is my heritage. But you can see either the European or the African or the Native American mixture in these individuals. And I pay attention to that now.
Different ethnic groups will have a sort of a cultural identity.
Mm-hmm.
How would you characterize the Mulungeon cultural identity?
People are starting to actually receive the truth about what really occurred. That history was purposely, strategically suppressed for certain reasons. And the theory, if you had just an ounce or less of either Native American blood or African blood, then they pick and choose. If you were brown skinned like me, you say, well, he's black. They put me in that category, but we're all kind of mixed up in that. But the community at large is starting to grow, it's starting to expand, and the truth is coming out. And I think it's really getting to the point where people are really curious. They want to know, but also once they find out the truth about this particular community and how the triracial community is actually all over the United States and actually all parts of the world, it's like, hey, let's accept it.
As far as your own goes and where various groups came from in your own background, you can say, oh, okay, they came in through this area or they migrated here. In your situation, what did that look like?
I hunt a lot, so and I stay in the woods. Well, why do I stay in the woods? My daddy, he said, you've got that. You got it honest. Well, what do you mean you got it honest? Well, your great-great-grandfather did it, and and your great-great-grandmother, she was Native American, and Ma Sally. He said, so it's in you. That's how I view it, and that's how I'm looking at it now, even today at 70 years old. I'm trying to play catch up on who I am.
For some Virginians, their cultural inheritance is rooted in religious beliefs, and their arrival in Virginia followed severe persecution elsewhere. That summarizes the way the Mennonites and the Brethren came to the Shenandoah Valley, as some descendants explain.
One of the things that doesn't happen today is we don't typically kill each other over our doctrinal beliefs. That was the norm in Europe at the time. Or killed by the government, or having your properties confiscated, or being imprisoned, etc. So Brethren Mennonites, like other religious communities in Europe, were persecuted. And really the reason they came to America. So starting 1600s, Mennonites started coming to America from Europe, almost exclusively settled initially in Pennsylvania. It was the only that offered religious freedom. William Penn actually went to Europe and solicited for religious minorities to come to Pennsylvania during and after the Revolutionary War. People like Brethren and Mennonites who didn't want to fight in the Revolution were treated very harshly. They had their properties confiscated, homes taken, they were imprisoned, and a few were even killed. And so that experience in Pennsylvania prompted some to move. Some went west, and when they hit the mountains, went over the mountains into Ohio, and then some, when they hit the mountains, came down the valley into Virginia.
Do you know where leather comes from?
Leo Heatwole is a descendant of David Heatwole, who built our shoemaker shop. And he's one of our volunteers that helps with our field trips and does a presentation in the shoemaker shop on our field trip days.
David Heatwole was my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. I'm the 8th generation. Parents were immigrants from Germany who left to come to America for religious beliefs. He was born in America. David and Magdalene Heatwole had 11 children, and he came down into the Shenandoah Valley and started looking for land. He found 85 acres, so he built a spring house from the limestone that he picked. He made a stone trough through it for water to run through. This was their type of refrigeration. Then he constructed the shoemaker shop, the same size as the reproduction here. When I stand in this shoemaker shop, even though it's been reconstructed, I'm standing over a spring house of the original stone that David Heatwell picked in the late 1700s. And it gives me a feeling of ancestry that I cannot really describe to you. I never met the man. He was much older than me, over 225 years, but I still have this special feeling of working, demonstrating to future generations.
The war came, and there were soldiers all over the valley here.
Ruth Jost is a descendant of many of the Mennonite families here in the valley, and she does our storytelling station for Field Trip. She tells many of her family stories, and particularly the stories of family members during the Civil War and how they lived out their faith during it.
My ancestors came to southeast Pennsylvania, and that was an area where it was known that if you're trying to get north to get to freedom, if you could get as far as southeast corner of Pennsylvania, you could probably make it. And that was because that area had Amish Mennonites, and it had Quakers, and some other German-descended groups who were there who tended to be sympathetic. The point was, who is going to turn you in if they catch you there? And these groups would not.
Didn't hold slaves. Mennonites and Brethren believed that was wrong.
And that's because Mennonites and Brethren believed that Jesus taught us to do unto others as we would want them to do to us. We wouldn't want somebody to make us a slave. And they also believed that Jesus said, love even your enemies. That means don't kill them. Don't join an army and kill them.
If you were a member of a Brethren or Mennonite church and you purchased enslaved persons, they would kick you out. If you wanted to join their church from another group and you were an enslaver, you owned enslaved persons, the people you'd enslaved had to be set free first. Not sold, set free.
They brought a faith, religion, basic peace position to the valley that it has been known for many years.
The commitment to peace means a commitment to each other. It means peace within the faith community. It's something that is very much focused inward on the group, but it also relates to your relationship to other people. As I've grown up in this community, I see a lot of people who spend a lot of time and energy and resources in projects and organizations that can help other people. I think it's really important. I certainly remember, as I was growing up here, Vietnamese refugees who came here. Eastern Mennonite University had, back in the 40s, I think, had accepted African students, which was very novel for this area here. But the refugee communities who came here, the Laotians then, and a number of other groups that continued to come, I think it was because of families who were here who were receptive and willing to pitch in and help. I think it comes out of a realization that if we're not going to take part in the military solutions, we need to be trying to extend what we see as Jesus' example of what he extended in healing and reaching out and in healing relationships between people.
Brethren and Mennonites, they tended to be agricultural or work in trades like the shoemaker shop. They certainly had an economic impact on the Shenandoah Valley and how it developed. During the war, Brethren and Mennonites didn't fight, though they tended to stay out of politics. I would say probably roughly 10% of the population here is Brethren and Mennonite. You know, they're certainly one part of the cultural tapestry that makes up the Shenandoah Valley.
The valley has become a place of welcome for a diverse array of refugees seeking new beginnings. On Virginia's eastern shore, it is largely work opportunities that bring Latino immigrants to the waterside communities. Our Keyris Manzanares shows us how symbiotic these relationships have become.
Alejandro Cruz was once a migrant farm worker who picked and harvested tomatoes and later scallops on Virginia's eastern shore.
En el 89 yo vine a Eastern Shore y empecé a trabajar en el tomate y llegué hasta el 92 piscando tomate. Ahorita estamos aquí en el campo de la compañía, donde hospeda a todos los trabajadores. Aquí fue donde yo llegué en 1989, llegué aquí.
Cruz says he takes pride in knowing he helped fill shelves at grocery stores, but it came at a cost.
Yo vivía con mis hermanos y solo ellos estaban solteros y yo estaba casado. Pues tenía un año de estar casado con mi esposa. Y la extrañaba más porque ella estaba embarazada de mi primer hijo. Mi esposa a veces me escribía porque en ese tiempo no había teléfonos.
When summertime hits and tomato season starts, Cruz says migrant camps on the eastern shore come alive with people arriving from Mexico, Central America, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. Lipman Family Farms hires the largest number of agricultural workers who come to Virginia on temporary work permits called H-2A visas. Often, one of the first people these workers meet is Cecilia Hernandez with Legal Aid Justice Center.
En el tiempo de verano, en el Eastern Shore, llegan aproximadamente 1,500 trabajadores agrícolas con visas H-2A y mi labor es irlos a visitar, hablar con ellos acerca de sus derechos que tienen como trabajadores, pero también les damos algunos entrenamientos de OSHA. Por ejemplo, este año estamos hablando mucho sobre la diferencia entre el calor y qué es un golpe de calor y qué es la insolación y cómo se pueden proteger. Bueno, este es uno de los folletos que entregamos a los trabajadores. Bueno, ahorita ya tenemos mucha comunidad latina, aquí en el Eastern Shore, la verdad es grande. Todos creo que desempeñan un gran trabajo en lo que es en el Eastern Shore, aportan demasiado a la comunidad. Tenemos mucha comunidad trabajando en las plantas de pollo, también trabajan en los viveros, en el agua.
Working conditions in the fields can be grueling for migrant workers due to a lack of many essential protections. Workers also face isolation and hunger. Hernandez says when there is no work due to rain or harvest, there is no pay.
Uno se siente como encerrado porque nosotros cuando llegábamos nomás al trabajo y al campo a donde vivíamos, del trabajo al campo. El fin de semana nos llevaban a comprar comida, a cambiar nuestro cheque y a lavar la ropa y otra vez a estar adentro.
In 2020, poultry plants in Accomack County were hotspots for COVID-19. Most recently, Tyson and Purdue are facing a federal investigation after reports surfaced that migrant children were helping clean the company's plants. In search of better pay, Cruz left the tomato industry and started fishing scallops. He says he was able to prosper and provide a better life for his family.
Bueno, allí nosotros pescábamos la scallop, pero nosotros estábamos todo el tiempo en el barco. Ahí dormíamos, comíamos, nos bañábamos y es una vida, pues trabajaba 18 horas y descansaba solamente 5 o 6 horas.
Hernandez says a challenge faced by many Latinos on the shore is misinformation surrounding tax filing and H-2A visa requirements.
Aquí hay bastante gente latina, incluso ya la gente empieza a ocupar puestos, yo les llamo la segunda generación, empieza a ocupar ya puestos, por ejemplo, tenemos gente latina en el centro de salud, ya tenemos gente latina como oficiales de policía.
Juan Gomez is a part of that second generation. Born and raised on the shore by Mexican parents, Gomez stepped up to the plate when he saw how COVID-19 affected the tight-knit Latino community.
I think it's just seeing a younger me, just look in the eyes of our kids that come to our clinics and understand like the importance of like maybe not having adequate housing, maybe not having adequate food supplies, or currently do my parents know what health insurance is?
As an outreach specialist for Eastern Shore Rural Health, Gomez makes sure that migrant workers and longtime Latino residents have access to care. In 2022, the center served 1,308 migrant and seasonal farm workers.
Our migrant population is here on a seasonal basis, so when they're here, we provide all the health services that we can. My team goes out and does blood pressure checks, does glucose checks. We are making sure that our population that's here is being seen and that their voices are being heard.
The importance of bilingual education is what drove Zorilu Bonilla to move to the shore in 2002 to teach at Accomack County Public Schools.
My first job here as a teacher was as a bilingual kindergarten teacher. It was a pilot program at Accomack Elementary School. Well, it grew to the point where maybe more than half of the classroom be Latinos in some classrooms. In the high schools, you walk down the hallways, a lot of faces that are of Latino heritage.
Bonilla says these students, along with their families, have added rich and varied traditions to the depth of culture on the shore.
We see a lot of a variety of Latinos here. We have entrepreneurs, we have workers in the field, we have workers in the chicken factories, and we have teachers. We're definitely growing here and making this community a part of us, and we are becoming a part of the community as well.
Liliana Velázquez came to the Eastern Shore in 2002 as an agriculture worker. Now she's a proud business owner on Chincoteague Island.
Yo nací en Chiapas, México, y la verdad de niña sufrí mucha pobreza, pero cuando me vine a este país yo venía con la decisión de triunfar, de salir adelante.
When it comes to the impact of Latinos on the shore, Velázquez says,
Pues el impacto que tenemos es que estamos creando empleos al poner nuestro propio negocio y también estamos aportando a este país económicamente.
For Alejandro Cruz, it's been a long journey. He was able to bring his wife to the shore and raise his children, all while extending a lending hand to those in need.
A mí me gusta compartir con los demás, ser amables con ellos, sin obtener nada, porque Dios ya me dio para bendecir. La bendición viene y uno tiene que bendecir también.
For VPM News, I'm Keyris Manzanares.
At one time, the entirety of Virginia was home to indigenous people. Of course, after generations of harsh, sometimes inhumane treatment, Native people make up just a small percentage of those who call Virginia home. In recent years, however, along with federal recognition, many of Virginia's Native tribes are thriving in important ways and, in some cases, reclaiming what is rightfully theirs. Our Billy Shields has this story.
My name is Frank Adams. I'm chief of the Upper Maspinock tribe. This is approximately 855 acres of reclaimed soil that used to be a sand and gravel mining operation. And when this property came onto the market, came up for sale, we decided that we could buy this property if we could write a conservation grant. So we wrote a federal grant and was successful about 9 months later. So we had a contract signed and we used the grant funding to pay for the property, slightly more than $3 million. Because it is property that's in our cultural living area, this is where we used to spend all of our time. But we would like to, since we do have some river frontage and some lake frontage, we would like to establish a fish hatchery on this property to help generate and improve the habitat of the shad and blueback herring that migrate up the river every year, along with mussels and other things that clean the water and whatnot. It took us 20 years to get federally recognized after we got a bill sponsored into Congress. But being federally recognized opens up so many more doors, so many more opportunities for funding to purchase properties like this and or just build our government, hire staff. Being federally recognized has opened many doors for us. It's a chore to manage 855 acres with the rains and the snowstorms and ice storms that occur occasionally around here. So we have a crew, we have a maintenance crew, a grounds management crew that will come up and inspect the property to make sure trees hadn't blown down or the roads haven't washed out or been compromised by heavy rains and whatnot. And, and as global warming and climate change comes, storms are getting bigger and bigger, so it is work for us. We got our due diligence to do to keep this property open and available to our tribal citizens to be able to enjoy. During the mining process, they dug pits, and the pits filled up with water eventually after they got a certain depth. And when we purchased it, they were in the process of draining all of these ponds. There's 3 ponds still on this property, but we saw the value in the water and the wetlands for nature. So we asked them, part of the contract was to leave these ponds unfilled and uncovered. Eventually we'll start some ecotourism for our tribal citizens and or the public so they can enjoy this magnificent piece of property. It's mostly a pine forest, but we would love to plant some indigenous trees on this property, trees that were, that the natives used hundreds and hundreds of years ago to survive with. This property is right on the banks of the upper reaches of the Mattaponi River. We have over a mile river frontage on this. It's a hike to go down to the river, but the river is where life is for Native Americans.
Indigenous families rebuilding on a storied past, Latinos contributing to commerce and coastal communities, Mennonites influencing a spirit of service and welcome in the Shenandoah Valley, and Mulungeons sharing a sense of kinship from their mixed-race origins. These are all Virginia stories. We thank you for engaging with us here at VPM News Focal Point, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Production funding for VPM News Focal Point is provided by Support for this program on VPM comes from our members in partnership with the Forbes Center for the Performing Arts, presenting Houston Ballet 2 performing The Sleeping Beauty Act 3, The Dance for Two from Don Quixote, and more. March 25th and 26th at 7:30 p.m. jmuforbescenter.com.
We have about 330 million people in this country, and about 18 million are veterans.
I think you just take for granted that they are getting what they need.
You survived a war, but how are you surviving and finding your place in civilian world?
How can veterans as a group maybe help bridge these terrible divides that are going on in our country?
Next time, a Blitz casualty is actually murder.
He wouldn't have stood a chance. Except he was dead already.
Foyle wonders if the victim's job holds the key to his death.
His paintings are worth a fortune, and Davis was the driver.
And as he investigates, his son Andrew is on a secret mission.
Nobody knows about these exercises.
That could cost lives. Foyle's War.
Our mission here at VPM is to educate, entertain, and inspire. Businesses and organizations who sponsor VPM help support this mission. Learn more about sponsorship opportunities by contacting us today.
This is the PBS app, ready for you when you want to watch full episodes of your favorites. Stream anytime, anywhere with the free PBS app.
The great Andrea Bocelli celebrates the 30th anniversary of his amazing career with a star-studded concert in Tuscany. Enjoy Andrea Bocelli 30th when the celebration comes to great performances.